All right, looks like we're official. We are officially recording and transcribing and all that important stuff. All right, so let's see. Thanks everybody for being here. Welcome. Um, as we're still adjusting a little bit to the Microsoft Teams. I can tell you that. I am still working out little bugs and the differences between that and Google Meet. But while we're here, so just please mute yourself when you're not speaking. And just know this webinar is being recorded for those of you who are showing up, and you can use the chat feature to ask questions or raise your hand, use that little hand raise tool at the appropriate time. But you can see that a lot of the tools that we've been using in Google Meet are the same. Starting from the left, you've got the chat. Click on the people to see the list of attendees. There's the hand for raising. You can put in cute little emojis using the react button. If you want to change the view of the gallery and the slideshow, you can do that. We're not going to be doing any breakouts, but if you need to change your background or any of that kind of good stuff, you can find that in the settings. And then, of course, you've got the camera mic that control the buttons that control your camera and your microphone. And the big red button, wait till the end to hit that. The purpose of today's huddle is for impact leadership. So we're talking about building that leadership team. So here's a little framing question for our time together. You're not actually answering that. It'll be answered through the content. So it's a framing question for our content. But imagine you've built a strong and motivated leadership team consisting of the board, staff, and volunteers. What does that look like? So we're starting at 11. We always kind of talk about the last 30, how things are going with your homework and so forth. And then we've got a couple of guest speakers I'll introduce in a minute to lead the 4 impact leadership piece. We will take a 10-minute break at noon and then be back at 10 after to continue the 4 impact leadership work. And then around 1:15, we'll talk about the next 30. What are we doing for the next 30 days? And then we adjourn at 1 o'clock. So you've got a couple of guys that are new faces sort of lingering. I just want to point them out. So we have Chandler Vaughn here, Policy and Leadership Advisor with the Virginia Rural Leadership Institute. You can just wave for now, Chandler. And so the Virginia Rural Leadership Institute is charged with developing civic-minded leaders who build strong communities. And you'll hear a little bit more about that from Chandler once we get into the 4 Impact Leadership piece. And we also have Todd Bradbury. He's CEO of Parallel Management Company. He is working with the Virginia Rural Leadership Institute starting soon. And his consulting agency creates team cohesion and productivity and business growth and profitability. So you can hear a little bit more from him. But Todd, do you have your camera on? You want to wave? Or you can wave at any time you want. So they'll be talking in just a moment, but I just want to do a quick roll call. And so we don't take a lot of time going through this. All I want you to do is type in your community name into the chat. That way we capture, not only your attendance, but the community that's being represented. So just type in the chat your community name. That's all you have to do. And that's going to be our roll call. We got more important things to do than class attendance. It just makes me think of Ferris Bueller, Bueller, and it just eats up time, doesn't it? We've got important stuff we got to tackle. So just continue to do that while we're working. So let's talk a little bit about the last 30. Let's get into it. So for the homework for this meeting was to register for the upcoming RevUps. Registration is currently open. So we have locations May 16th in Fredericksburg, the 17th in Alta Vista, and the 18th in Bristol. So that link in this slide deck works. There's one at the beginning and at the very end, but you also find it through our blog, on our virginiamainstreet.com website, all that kind of good stuff. Then continue to tinker with your mission, vision, and values until you're satisfied with it. Review that with your Virginia Main Street Program Administrator if you need a little technical assistance. You want to kind of throw out, hey, this is where we are in this and we're really happy with it. But ultimately, it's for you. This is for your organization. Then you need to set aside some time to fully build out your community network analysis. And this is a tool that you will use. It's not just for this and you're going to forget it. You're going to have this for your organization. It documents all of your uh, existing or future partners and how you can connect with them, and also really helping to gauge that you are connecting thoroughly with the diversity of your community. So there was a community network analysis chapter out of the Community Heart and Soul workbook. Community Heart and Soul, really great resource. I'm going to be using some of those tools throughout our Mobilizing Main Street. And so there's some information out there to just dig a little deeper into the community network analysis. So doing a demographic cross-check, making sure that you're really covering your bases and that the groups that you are documenting in the network analysis do reflect the diversity of your community. You know, what are those group connectors? Do you know anybody who is connected to those groups? That could be a way of bringing them in somehow as a partner, as a potential leadership, new leadership for your organization. And then how do they communicate? What's the best way to get in touch with them? And then brainstorm ideas to engage each group. And then of course, meet with your PA in between for technical assistance. And these are great resources. While these two resources are really focused more for those who do not have 501c3 nonprofits, which we found out more of you do than what we thought, which is actually a good thing. For those of you who do not, these are really good tools to help you get that nonprofit established. And then even starting a Main Street Guide, that's more so for any of you that are just really, even if you have that 501c3, that guide is really helpful. You can see it's a bit of my my own guide for moving through some of the work that we're doing. So that's really great. That's from Oregon Main Street. So at this point, nobody's raising hands. I just hear little noises. Make sure I know who it is. So at this point, I'm just curious, what have each of you learned over the last 30 days while performing your action items? So this could be new information, insights, any questions that they brought up. So let's chat a little bit. Who wants to go first? Do you want me to call on you? I will. Let's see, who's feeling bright-eyed and bushy-tailed? How about somebody from Martinsville? Beverly, you trying to unmute? I see you. I can tell. I can tell.
And I'm trying to change my view. There we go, gallery. I was looking at content. Trying to see you all. It's not, okay. Well, we have recently hired our new executive director, and he started last Monday, which has been fantastic. So, you know, we've been doing knowledge transfer and just we're learning how much energy there is for new blood to come in and really help refuel us. And in doing this without an executive director for a little while has been extremely challenging. So we realize how amazing it is to have a dedicated resource.
Right.
And and then we're also seeing a groundswell of support from people in the community and partners who are really excited and encouraging of this new executive director. So I think that's a lot of the learning. And also, you know, yesterday I met with him again, and he's meeting with all the board. But you know, I pulled from the resource that you all have provided us, the community network analysis, and we reference that and talk through it. And so I'm finding how much this cohort is helping us in our next steps.
Nice, good, Beverly. That's what we're aiming for. I'm so glad to hear that there's some value in all this. And I could also see how a new executive director to see this great document that lists out the partners can also help them help him to understand the landscape and make it a little easier for that relationship development. So awesome. That's a wonderful story. How about somebody from Covington? What have you learned over the last 30 days?
I met with, can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you, Julie.
Okay. I met with the the communications director over at West Rock, because I realized that we didn't have any representation in Old Town Covington, and we were a little thin on representation from the West Rock, the blue collar, where most of our folks in town are from. And that's how we're going to access a lot more of our resources, is through westrock.org. And the guys at the mill, when they start helping us fundraise, that's going to help us a lot with getting more funds and sustained funding.
Yeah, those corporate partners are quite powerful. I mean, not only connections to funding, but connections to the community too, and getting out the word. That's great.
That was
Good.
that was the most important part, was the connection to the community, and getting them involved in some of our projects and everything. We just didn't realize we didn't have that connection there.
Good. Keep it up. Thank you,
So yes,
Julie.
definitely.
Good. How about you, Eric? I see you raised your hand. I love proactivity here. And Eric's with Colonial Beach.
Yes, so we've been looking at census data and trying to understand like what our community really looks like. And so we've figured out that our community has two big demographic components. One are people, I think, over 50 or 55 or something like that, and the other big chunk of people in this town are people between Susan, correct me, or Jeff, correct me, was it between 9 and 15 or something like that? So we have a lot of gray hair people and a lot of very young people. And so we need to sort of figure out how to reach out into, well, the gray hair people are not a problem. We know where they are, we know how to reach them, but it's the younger people that we need to figure out how to reach them. We also did take on 2 new board members that are, one of them is African American. And so we're trying to have our board be reflective of the community. We do have a significant African American community in town, so we're trying to reflect that in our board. We've been busy.
Yeah, you are. You guys are busy. Thank you.
And
Thanks, Eric.
one of our new board members is part of BAM, which is the children's program here in town. So that's been a help too, to reach that younger population.
Good. Thank you, Susan. And then I see Clarksville, you have your hand raised.
On mute. One of the things for us, with being such a small town with 1,300 people, was to see how lengthy our list was of civic organizations, and really going through and listing everything. It's really quite robust, and that's exciting.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think, or at least I witnessed that this isn't one of those activities that often goes on across Main Street, but man, is it a powerful one, because when you start inventorying all your potential partners, it certainly makes it easier to find the resources that you need for your impact. So I'm so happy to hear, Tara, that you guys are finding that valuable. Let's go for maybe, oh, did you have something else you want to say?
Just saying that the template is very user friendly, and it forces you to go back and add to it versus just giving the assignment on a blank sheet of paper. So we appreciate that.
Yeah. There's a little bit that definitely is a perk. Working on a little bit of technology gaps on some of our other tools. You'll find that out in the future with our next homework assignment. All right, well, I tell you, we'll have time for everybody else to check in a little bit later on, but I want to get to our content today. So for those of you who are eager to speak, I don't see any hand raised, but those of you you're eager to speak, there'll be an opportunity. Don't you worry. So let's go ahead and get into our content today. So I have a few slides to just sort of lead up to Todd and Chandler talking in a few minutes. But so for impact leadership, so we're just talking about building that strong, motivated team. And for Main Street, people are at the heart of getting the work done, and you do it with each other. So when do people own revitalization? I mean, we're talking about the whole community here. It's when they recognize the importance of having a role in the process, when we recognize everyone has a role in the process, and when they move into action. So there is very much an action component to this. And what are the roles that we're talking about filling when it comes to Main Street organization? Of course, 501c3, you got your board of directors, an executive director, the supporting staff in some cases, and then of course committees, so those volunteers. And our board of directors, while we'll have sort of a number of different skill sets that are part of that, some of the responsibilities, there's just a few of them that are your primary ones with your executive suite, your chairperson who presides at the board meeting and creates meeting agendas and holds members accountable for attending the meetings. You got your vice chair that prepares to assume the board chair. That's the best case scenario when you have somebody lined up to take that on. But assist the board chair in executing duties. You've got the secretary that's really responsible for distributing the agenda, keeping everybody in the loop through the board meeting minutes and assuring documents are filed and accessible and so forth. And then your treasurer, really involved with the banking side of things, has a pulse on the budget, providing reports, even reviewing the annual audit and presenting it to the board, keeping that front and center. And a few of your responsibilities is generally as board members, you want to establish that organizational identity. So that's ensuring the planning, that you have a map, where you're going, and then determining the mission, purpose, and advocate for them. So that's where your voice. And then you also want to ensure resources for the organization. This is the quickest and dirtiest board training you'll ever get, but you want to ensure resources. So, selecting the chief executive or executive director as Main Street goes, building a competent board, making sure that you guys are all working together, financial resources for the organization, and also speaking well and enhancing the organization's public standing. And then providing oversight, just making sure everything's getting done appropriately, supporting and evaluating that executive director, monitor and strengthen programs and services, protect assets and financial oversight, and ensure legal and ethical identity. And we can get into more of this another time. I don't want to take away any time any further from Chandler and Todd being with us today. So I'm going to stop sharing. And so I think Chandler wanted to say something real quick before Todd gets into his piece. So let me stop sharing. And then Todd, you can bring up your slides.
Thanks, Kyle. I guess this can be kind of billed as a commercial break in between two different presenters. It's good to be with you all. I'm Chandler Vaughn. I work with the Virginia Rural Center, and I'm the program director for the Virginia Rural Leadership Institute. I grew up in a small town in Southside Virginia, Keysville. So I'm closest to Farmville as a Main Street community, but I think second closest is Clarksville. So it's good to see you guys on the call. Looking forward to being down in Clarksville. Whenever I'm visiting my parents, we always come over to Bugs Island Brewing to catch a couple of drinks with friends after seeing my parents for a few hours. So it's good to be with you all. I understand the situation you guys are in and appreciate the work that you're doing. My parents are both on Main Street in Keysville. My mom works at the post office directly across from my dad, who's a real estate agent. So I can appreciate the work you guys are doing and appreciate the work you guys are doing to revitalize communities and build them up to get to the next level. So I'm here to briefly talk about the Virginia Rural Center. We're an advocacy group that convenes meetings throughout the year to discuss particular issue areas for rural. That could be housing, it could be workforce development, it could be broadband. And one of the things we heard through a lot of those listening sessions a few years back was a need for capacity building at the local level. So throughout the pandemic and in the last couple of years, we've put together and launched the Virginia Rural Leadership Institute. It's a program where we convene 30 cohort members to go through 4 sessions. And these cohort members could be private sector, they could be nonprofit, local government, and develop the skills that are specifically needed for leadership in rural communities. I'm sure as you guys have seen on this call, I understand you guys represent a broad range of communities across the state. What it might take to represent a Main Street community in one area, an urban area, might be different than what it is in a rural area. So our program is about delivering those skills that are specifically needed for rural communities across the Commonwealth. And I'm excited to be joining you all today. The punchline to this commercial break is we're featuring Main Street communities throughout the sessions of VRLI, where it will be in Danville in May, and Todd's going to join us in Danville in May. So looking forward to hearing from them there. And if you're interested in the program, we're going to be accepting applications again the first part of next year. Our website, I'll put it in the chat, cfrv.org/VRLI. So again, thanks for the time, and I'm looking forward to hearing what Todd has as well up next.
Awesome. Thank you, Chandler. Todd, the stage is yours. I'm your right-hand man. Tell me what you need. All right.
Yeah, thank you. How are you all doing? Actually, instead of how are you doing, let me ask, where are you at? If you've ever been to New Orleans, that's how people greet each other in New Orleans. They say, where are you at? And that's my first question for you today. It's an excellent question. Where are you at? Because we'll hear a whole lot about vision and mission and values and purpose and all where we're going to be. I want to know where you're at. So 0 to 10 in your organization right now, how would you score where you at versus where you want to be? Every town is, I guess I have to admit somebody waiting in the lobby. Okay. Every town is in a different state. We want to talk about state. And the first state to recognize is where you at. So 0 to 10, just think of a number. I'm not going to call you out. But 0 to 10, where you at versus where you want to be. Now, the second question, because the first one, where you at 0 to 10, as a business guide, as a coach, the answer I get to that question most often is a 6. You know, I'm at a 6. And this can apply to you personally, your enterprise, whatever. The answer I get most often, I'm at a 6, which is just a little bit, you know, if 0 is ready to jump off a bridge and 10 couldn't be any better. We say say I'm at a 6, and it's a little discouraging. You know, you didn't come this far in life to be at a 6. But we need to make reasonable progress in reasonable time. So if your community, if your organization today is a 3, a 4, a 6, I want you to go out now to the year 2026. We're in 2023. I want everybody here to imagine that we are sitting here on this call in this meeting 3 years from today on April 13th, 2026. Now, this is the power of visioning. It is get a good idea. If you're at a 6 now, what does an 8 look like? In a reasonable period of time, what would it look like if in 3 years your organization went to an 8? Someone's knocking on the door and the dog is barking. We live in a new world. I'm at my mom's house. Guys, talk amongst yourselves for a minute, would you? Sorry, I got to put you on. I'll turn it back over to you for a second there.
So that's good. It might take a moment for everybody to think about. All right. In several years, what does it look like to be where you are, where you want to be? What are those things? What are a few details about that? You can throw that into the chat. What does that 8 mean on that scale? Or a few qualities. I don't know if there's a little bit of a delay on the chat. It seems to be quiet. That's sustaining the organization. Got enough financial and human resources to make it work. Yeah.
Okay, I think I've got that was the mom's lawnmower. We don't want to stop local enterprise here in Wytheville, Virginia. So sorry about that.
Well, that's all right, Todd. They started populating the chat with answers to your question.
Yeah, good. So this is as simple as it is. I am a business person. I will tell you this right now. I don't like the word nonprofit. I never use the word nonprofit. Saying it makes me throw up in my mouth a little bit because nonprofit, a nonprofit attitude, I have seen it over and over and over again, that if you think like a nonprofit, you're going to flounder and fail. Sorry, but that's the word I got for you. And as we go through today, I want you to pick out a few words that just make you think, because that's our goal, is to just maybe think about things a little bit differently. Let's get a handle on the fundamentals of what the fundamentals of an enterprise are. But this is as simple as it is. You will hear, and people like me, influencers, consultants, people on social media, the people who write books, will tell you that it's all about vision, right? That it's all about vision. And I will argue that what is more important than vision is presence. The word vision, the word leadership, the word culture. Think about words as objective and subjective. Okay, these are the frames that I want us to work on today, because there's only in enterprise, as a manager, you get paid. And conversations. That's our activity. It is about making decisions and talking to people, building relationships. Now, that is as simple as it is. In business, you have two jobs, people and process. And what we have to recognize is that everything is a process and people are everything. We have to learn to look at through these two frames of it and I. So I want you to just picture that when we use certain words, some words get a circle around them. A circle word, to me, is a subjective word that is difficult to measure, manage, define. A circle word, subjective, right? It's in the eye of the beholder. And that's my caution about words, even using the words mission, vision, values, purpose. These are circle words that can be difficult to define. I am a manager, and I want us to understand the difference, or what management is all about. And here's the essence of it. We manage things, okay? You manage an it. You do not manage an I. There is a big difference between an it and an I. It management, IT management, is managing a system. And that is what management is. It's managing a system. It is a process, right? We have to learn to see what is a circle word and what is a word that I put in a box. If I put a box around a word, that is a literal. It is an objective. It is a management word. Okay? I want us to get this language down, that we can say even the same word and have two different meanings to it, or we can have a word that I say that means something to me that means something entirely different to you. So let's take the biggest example today, the word equity. Right? Equity is a word that can be difficult to define in a subjective way. So you draw a circle around the word equity. Then it is an ideal, and it can be more difficult to manage, an ideal versus an it. Okay. So here's my message about management. Management is inside the box. It is systems. It's about getting things done. If I had to define management, it is getting things done, taking care of things, taking care of business, right? So it is not mission, vision, value, strategy, all this stuff. Let's get it down to what the basics. I'm going to talk about just some of the fundamentals of people and process. But first, let's just talk about a couple fun things. An important word, if you're keeping words, is the word map. And I heard Kyle use it. The word map. Powerful, a powerful word. Because a map is what it is. It's one of those it words that you put in the square. It is a process. A map is a process. Okay. This is the state of Virginia, and if anyone has ever traveled from one end to the other, you may know that it can take. I used to live in Chesapeake, and I was responsible for the entire state and into southern West Virginia. And I could drive from Chesapeake to New York City a whole lot faster than I could drive from Chesapeake to Big Stone Gap. Right? Our furthermost town, our farthest west town, Ewing, is closer to 9 other state capitals than the capital of Virginia. You recognize that? You know that in Big Stone Gap? 9 state capitals are closer to Ewing than Richmond is. And isn't that interesting? 9. From Indianapolis, Columbia, South Carolina, Raleigh, do the math, look it up. So we come from such a huge state, and every town is in a different state. The number that you gave, 0 to 10, your situation is entirely different. I love the fact that the state and other organizations coming in and helping you try to put some structure to what you're trying to do, but fully recognize that every town is different. But a map is as simple as where you at versus where you want to go, and then what's got to happen for you to get there. So I want to make sure when we talk about mobilizing Main Street, first thing recognize is where you at. So a map we use to map a process. We have to, as a manager, that's what we do. We manage processes. So decisions and conversations. The decision part is pretty simple. We'll talk about some things in a minute. I'll give you some practical guides to enterprise. Managing it and managing managing a thing and working with people are 2 different skill sets. And that's what keeps people like me busy. I heard someone say you found an executive director, and that executive director position, I refer to that as a general manager. That's a general manager, somebody responsible for the system and the team, the system and the people. That's it. But our skill sets and how we see the world are different. People are different. Managing a system, we can give you the basics of what a business looks like. And that stuff is pretty simple. You can learn it in the 8th grade. You can go, in fact, community college, I have a master's of business administration. And if I were to do it over again, I would have an associate's in business administration, because you learn all you need to learn with some basic accounting. This is simple stuff. Revenue minus cost equals profit. You have a balance, a balance sheet, and you have an income statement. But I'm getting off the topic of the map. We have a big state, and it's very, very different. And so where you at now where you want to be, and the difference between those is what we make a game plan out of. That's as complicated as it gets. Now, where you at now, things change, all right? Is anybody familiar with Fincastle County? Fincastle County, not to be confused with Fincastle City, the town of Fincastle. The Fincastle Counties formed way back in the 1700s, and at one time, it stretched to the Mississippi River. And the seat of Fincastle County in 1775 was in the lead mines district of Wythe County, Austinville, which is a suburb of Fort Chiswell, which will tell you how big a place this is. Austinville was the county seat of Fincastle County that later became a lot of other counties, right? So from just west of Roanoke all the way to the Mississippi River, it included a county called Kentucky, the county of Kentucky. So if you go to Austinville now, you don't see a whole lot there. In Wytheville, and you guys probably hear a lot about Wytheville because they have managed to, and I've seen it develop, they've managed to go from a 6 to an 8, and a lot to be emulated. But here's a crazy thing about Wytheville. If you've ever driven through Wythe County, this is called a wrong way concurrence, and it happens in just a few places around the world where when you were driving through Wytheville, you were on 77 north and 81 south while you are traveling due west. Isn't that interesting? You know, the highways run north to south theoretically, but the way it works there, you're in a wrong way concurrence. And so Virginia at one time included all the way to, included the whole Northwest Territories. Where you're at today is not where you're going to be tomorrow. And the situation, the state, the current state, where you're at, that's the balance. That's your balance sheet. That is what it is, right? We talk about finding balance. You don't find balance. You measure balance. You see, this is where you're at. That is balance. So understanding balance, because there's two statements in business, a balance sheet that tells us where we're at, and a flow statement or a profit and loss statement that talks about what happens in between times. Okay, so you need to understand just enough about accounting to know balance and flow. What it is ain't what it's going to be. So the process part is pretty simple. Revenue minus cost equals profit, and what you own minus what you owe is the value of your enterprise. Now, I want to spend most of our time together talking about peopling, and I'm going to start with yourself. All right, politics is not my area, but I have a question for you. Do you live closer to a Whole Foods or to a Cracker Barrel? And if you live, most of this crowd is probably closer to a Cracker Barrel, I imagine. But here's the funny thing. I can tell who you voted for in the last election, 80% accuracy based on which you live closer to, a Whole Foods or a Cracker Barrel. Now, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? In a state that, people from outside the state think we're all the same, and we're not. And we can break down people just to understand people. People are circles. People are subjective. People are strange. How about that? We are psychosocial sentient systems, which means we're wackos. We are all wackos. And I want you to understand how and exactly how and why we're wackos. I want you to understand the process of peopling, how we make decisions, how our brains work a little bit. But if you live closer to a Cracker Barrel, I will tell you that if 80% of your area voted for one guy and 20% voted for the other guy, here's my message. Whole Foods people and Cracker Barrel people are people, okay? Southwest Virginia people and Northern Virginia people are people. CEOs and laborers are people. Democrats and Republicans. I live closer to a Whole Foods now. I live in Richmond, in the city of Richmond. I live closer to a Whole Foods. And I grew up in Wythe County, closer to a Cracker Barrel. I tell you what, I found about Whole Foods people. They're people, and they are just about the same. We may see dreadlocks in one place and a mullet in another, but human beings are human beings. If we don't learn anything else today, that's it. Humans and a human and a thing are two different things, okay? When Kyle talks about roles, the role of the board of directors, of your board, the roles of your volunteers, a role. Never confuse a role with a soul. Because God knows we are way too divided. And here is a good example of it, of how we tend to divide ourselves. Because there are two kinds of people in the world, the way we see it. We and they. That's the way we are biologically programmed, we and they. And me being from Southwest Virginia, where the star is, and I call it SWIVA. I want to get that started. We've got a fair number of Southwest Virginia people in here. Call it SWIVA, because Northern Virginia's got NOVA. You know, when you're in college, you see rides, things posted up, ride needed to NOVA. Well, I think we should start SWIVA, hashtag SWIVA. But I come from SWIVA, and it's part of how I see the world. When I lived there, I thought that there was Southwest Virginia and there was everywhere else, right? And there's my people and there's those people. And that's the way we see the SWIVA. People are people. If you are among the 80% that voted for the one guy, know that 20% of the world, 20% of even your world did not. And the people who visit your area may come from an area where they see things a little differently. But people are people. And let's understand a little bit about how people work, how we make those decisions. And we're going to talk about neuroscience. Neuroscience, a science so new, they call it neuroscience. And the way we understand neuroscience is with the marvelous mullet. I know some of you guys are familiar with the mullet. Some of you may be sporting one now or may have. And you know what they say. Somebody put it in the chat. What do they say about the mullet? Come on. What do they say about the mullet? I'll sit here all
business in the front, party in the back.
Thank you very much. Now you know all you need to know about neuroscience. This is the way brains work. And I want you to get a feel for this. This will all come together a little bit, I believe. Here's how your mind works. Here's how our mind works is we have party in the back, and neuroscience, they call that system one. System one thinking. And that is called our autoresponder. Our automatic pilot is in the back of the head. If you put your hand back there, you feel a little knot. That's the system that tells us what to do when we're not thinking about what we're doing. Okay, this is system one in the back of your head is brushing your teeth, right? You don't think about brushing your teeth, you just do it. And that is automatic thinking. And here's what we need to know about our automatic thought process. 90% of the time we are in system one, party in the back, doing things without thinking about it. 90% of the time, even when you think you're thinking about doing something, you're not always thinking about doing it. Think about, let's just consider driving a car. When you learn to drive a car, you are business in the front. Everything is hard. You got to put the key, even putting the key in the ignition is hard. And turn, the simple things that you are in system two when you are learning to drive. System two is your slow thinking. It's your manual process. Your management mind is system two. That's what kicks in when system one sees a problem, right? When system one says, whoa, this isn't business as usual. And I'll give you the most disgusting example I can think of, and that is brushing your teeth. You learn to brush your teeth. When you first learn, you're in system two. Everything is hard when you teach a kid to brush their teeth. So if you want to try it, brush your teeth with your alternate hand, with your left hand, you will see that takes system one thinking, that business in the front. When we are in automatic mode, we tend to do first, think later, right? The example of brushing your teeth, it just comes so naturally that you don't think about it until you find a cockroach on your toothbrush. I was working on a construction project in Bath County on the pump storage project at Lake Mumau when I was in college. And I lived in a man camp, which is just exactly like you think it would be. It was a man camp. The hygiene, everything about it was a man camp. And we had our own little quarters there. And I woke up one morning. I worked from 5 to 5 on that project, 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. Woke up one morning, went over to brush my teeth, and there was a cockroach the size of a small chihuahua hanging on to my toothbrush and sucking onto the bristles, right? So all of a sudden, system one isn't working anymore. It says something isn't right here, and you're faced with a choice. I hope that never happens to you, but I was faced with the choice that morning. I hate to not brush my teeth, but there's been a cockroach sucking on, so I kind of had to call time out and consider my options. And I won't tell you what I chose, but I will tell you I hate to not brushing my teeth. So one option would be washing the toothbrush off and go ahead and using it. But you got to understand the mullet to understand kind of your automatic thinking process. What makes us do what we do? Now, what's programmed back in there? A lot of crazy stuff. All our experiences, all the stories we tell ourselves, the movies we play in their mind, they play in the back of the head. And then when we get in management mode, we go up in here to the front and we say, okay, what's really going on, and what do we need to do about it? What's the best thing to do? So understand the mullet, because one big thing that is back there in system one, that party in the back, is your personality style. What drives you? Personality style, and that's what I'll spend a big part of our time talking about. Questions? Everybody, I see everybody had logged off. Now everybody's up. Everybody's on. So maybe, I don't know, maybe it got your attention, or how we see the world. We don't manage people. People are circles, right? But what we do is we can assess how we tend to behave, how we tend to act when we're not thinking about behaving. Okay? And I want to share with you, there are two things that two different frames to consider your personality style. So this is stuff in the back of your brain that makes us all a little bit different. This is how I want to categorize us, how I want to divide us based on two things, two ranges of the way. First of all is attitude. This is attitude, how we tend to look at the world. And the main way that I break that down is between science and art. So let's imagine that science on the left, that's logic, that's literal, that's objective, that's math, it's management, it's right. On the right is art. That is meaning, it's purpose, it is people, it's being human. So I have a question to ask everybody here. I want you to get to know yourself a little bit and start with some ground rules by saying there's no good or bad, no right or wrong. It is just the way we tend to look at the world. We all tend to lean one way or the other. Okay? Remember Eileen, cousin Eileen, right? I lean toward science or I lean toward art. I lean toward the job, the spreadsheet, the task, logic, and things, or I lean toward the people. And so here's the question for you. I want to ask you just one question to divide us up, to put us in boxes. Do you consider yourself more warm and accepting or more questioning and skeptical? If you had to choose right now and put it in the chat, there is no good or bad, no right or wrong. If all of us, everybody in the world lined up and you had one person in the middle who could go either way, perfect balance, which side are you on? Cy, Uncle Cy, the science guy, or Uncle Art, the warm and accepting? Glad we got one that admitted to science and logic. Half the world's on one side and half the world's on the other, as we define it, okay? So if I lean more toward art, what I got to know is that half the world don't. This is important stuff, okay? Warm and accepting, questioning and skeptical. Which is better? Here's the answer, which is the answer to most everything in business, enterprise, and life. The answer is, it depends. It depends on the situation. You need both. It is yin and yang. This is soft skills and hard skills, and you need both. I'm telling you, the hard skills for what you guys have to do, what is in front of you, is simple. Simple, simple, simple. If you call me anytime in the next 3 years, I will be able to tell you with math. Simple. You're here, you need to be here. Soft skills are hard, can be hard, but some of us are all about soft skills. And what you'll find in a nonprofit environment, I said that word, what you'll find in your world often is that the warm and accepting people tend to gravitate to the jobs of serving people, right? And where systems people who tend to lean towards systems tend to lean towards system jobs. Let me tell you about the general manager, the executive director, the person who has to pull it off, has to be the utility infielder. You have to recognize that there is a time for art and a time for science, but and learn to stretch. It is just about practice. We are in both worlds every day, all day long. We go between figuring something out, solving a problem, and having a conversation. So first you got to know which way you lean, and then where you at? What is the conversation? What does the situation call for? What's the state? All right, we got to pick up the pace a little bit. I said that is one axis of one axis, the axis of attitude. And think about this as if you're wearing glasses. That process on the left, people on the right. Just for the sake of not right and left, just humor me. That process is on the left. The way to remember this, left is logical. Okay, left is logic, math. Revenue minus cost equals profit. So we process and personal. I know I lean. I may lean way strongly on the personal side. There's a time I got to get into my spreadsheet, and vice versa. Then the other axis, the axis of acceleration. So here's the next question for you. We're going to identify your personality style here. Do you consider yourself, if you had to choose, more fast-paced and outspoken, or more cautious and reflective? If you had to choose, more fast-paced and outspoken, or more cautious and reflective? Not good or bad, not right or wrong. Spoken or more cautious and reflective? We're learning how to people. So now you may have heard of the DISC model of personality style. We can measure personality style in a lot of different ways, and I'm partial to the DISC model. Hey, the dog's barking, sorry. Take a minute to think about this, and this is going to, I want to open it up, get somebody else to talk, because this doesn't put you in a box. This should tell you how you lean, and I want to describe. If you lean more toward process and more fast-paced and outspoken, you are in the upper left quadrant. That is the D style. Okay, more fast-paced and outspoken, but more questioning and skeptical. That's the D style. This is the dominant style. This is about getting things done. Get it done. That's what the D style will say. Get it done. The I style, personality, fast-paced and outspoken, more personal than process. The I style is about influence. A caution word there with influence, because it's a circle word, and the definition of influence is leadership. But I want to be careful. I know you will hear the word leadership a million times through this cohort, and I know we preach everybody's got to be a leader. It's all about leader, leader, leader. But leadership is influence, plain and simple, according to John Maxwell, who is the coach of leadership. Leadership is influence. So the I style is influence. It is fast-paced and more personal. Then you have, and I absolutely just completely screwed up this chart because I got the S and the C in the wrong place. So never mind. This is the C over here in the bottom left. If you are more warm and accepting and more cautious and reflective. This is the S style in the lower right. The S style is about get together. This is harmony, stability, okay? And then you have the C style in the lower left, which is the more complex style. This is somebody who leans toward being cautious and toward the process. So for the C style, what's important is getting it right. Can't stand the thought of it getting wrong, the C style. Plus, the C style has the additional quality of being private. And that's one little thing that makes the C style a little different. And I am married to one. I can tell you all about the C style. Conscientious, get it right. So D, I, S, and C. I'll change to where they're in the right order. D, I, S, and C. The D says get it done. The I style says get going. The S style says get together. The C style says get it right. More than that, can't stand the thought of it being wrong. So in an enterprise, we have dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness, and your job is all four. Our job is all four, but we lean, right? And what is important to know, if there's one thing to remember about this chart of personality styles, 25% of the population falls in each quadrant. I don't care whether you're in a Whole Foods or a Cracker Barrel, whether you have a mullet or what your hairstyle is, 25% of the population falls in each quadrant. And as you meet people, this tells you who you tend to gravitate toward, who you relate to. But yeah, this is it. I think this is the most important thing for you to understand, how you lean, how you tend to respond when the heat is on. Because we stretch every day. Let's take an example, the D style, dominant, that you think of, well, let's take the S style, my mom. And a mom, a grandmother is a stereotypical S style. Let's get together, steady, harmony, don't rock the boat, nurturing, right? But if you're a mom and you have an S style and somebody messes with your kids, you're going to see the D style come out in a hurry, Mama Grizzly, right? So we stretch all day, every day. As our responsibilities grow with an enterprise, we have to stretch more. But as we stretch, as we practice, we get better at it because there's a time for D and a time for S. Okay? Let's open it up. Any comments? Anybody say, yeah, I'm an S, my husband's a D? Anything? Somebody else talk. It can be mapped to the 4 houses of Hogwarts. It can be mapped to animals. It is, yeah.
My team at work did this DISC assessment, and it's been helpful. And we did this when we first formed as a team. I actually would love to do it now after we've been together for a year and see, what findings and ways that we've used it throughout the year. I think this is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have experience with personality assessments that want to chime in? This is my world. This is what I know this stuff pretty good. So there are other personality assessments, like the Big Five is one you could research. Myers-Briggs, that has been around forever. If anybody has experience with Myers-Briggs, here's what I'll tell you about Myers-Briggs. And Terry admits to being a C-style and puts it out there publicly. I love it because C-styles don't normally share that much. That's the Ravenclaw house, I guess. I'm not as familiar with cohorts. And Susan has experience with Myers-Briggs. here's what I will say. Myers-Briggs is a powerful tool. It measures you on 4 different axes, right? I just asked you 2 questions, right? Myers-Briggs, here's the way I think about it. DISC is an X-ray. Myers-Briggs is an MRI. Sometimes an X-ray is helpful because, and a great question from Jessica, don't let me forget that. Sometimes it is helpful to look at a deep dive, right, on 4 different criteria. And if we all had 2 days to spend together, Myers-Briggs can be powerful. Somebody asked how they correlate or if they correlate. They don't intentionally, but what this circle is a list of adjectives. If you picture adjectives all around the circle that describe you, and if enthusiasm is up here for an I style, so and then we put a dot in here based on where you fall on this. Myers-Briggs will measure 4 different continua, and one of them, the first one, is between introversion and extroversion. And that line, if we were to measure it, runs directly from the C to the I. That would be your measure of extrovert up here and introvert down there. But again, we are all introverts and we're all extroverts. It depends on the situation.
Todd?
Yes, sir.
It's about 7 after 12. We had planned a break, but we can navigate through that and continue on depending on, your material and the pulse of the audience. How would you like to proceed?
I think it is actually a good time for a break.
Okay.
I would like for you to just take a little bit of time to ask you, to find yourself on this chart. And then the second thing I would ask you to think about is to pick one person who you want to build a stronger relationship with. And when we come back, I'd like to talk about how we can do that. And as specific as possible, if you guys can open it up, I'm tired of talking. Open it up and say, it's all between us, doesn't go any further. Tell me your husband is a D style. How do I get along with him? And let's have that kind of conversation when we get back. Because I want to talk about some plain nuts and bolts things and the way I see your world and what I would be doing right now if I were you. I want to talk about that to leave you some things with next steps to focus on. But this is important to understand that people are all the same and we're all different. So let's take a few minutes and think about it and come back in 10 minutes.
Perfect, Todd. Just based on time, let's come back at quarter after. So I'll leave the slide up. Everybody can look at it, but come back at quarter after so we're not too far off. So just a little hustle, just a little. But hopefully this break is helpful. All right, see you guys in a few minutes. All right, everybody, make your way back. Turn that camera on. Jolena, you're one of those rare I, E, NFP folks. The E and the I am just into the I, but I identify a little more with the I. But we're a rare bird, but very valuable.
Yes. So for the first like 10 years of my career, I wondered why I sat in meetings and felt like I was talking a different language because I was with a bunch of ESTJs.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. Looks like we already started talking about Todd.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm happy to listen.
Yeah. But so I have to do the stretching into some of those other areas though, because I can be so heavy, believe it or not, heavy sort of feeler on all this stuff that it makes it a little, and I get so into the mission that I miss the buttons and the spreadsheets and the deadlines and all that kind of stuff. It makes it a little bit hard. So I got to stretch. I got to stretch. Who else has
Well,
done this? Yeah. Todd, you can continue on.
okay.
It's your stage.
Well, I didn't want to be put on the stage. I wanted to be put in the conversation.
Okay.
But so where we have to stretch the most is the opposite corner, right? So if you think you come from that C style, then your area of stretch is into the I style, right? So there is the C style, what you are, in Southwest Virginia, in Swiva, we say somebody's bad to drink, right? My uncle Joe was bad to drink, or he's good to whatever. So when we have the C style is good to get things right and bad to get things right. Does that make sense? It's your shadow side. Your strength is also your weakness. If I am a strong I style and I am big, boom, boom, shake up the room, and yes, I have to get down and I have to sit down at a spreadsheet. That's my stretch to go from I to C. If I'm a D, a dominant person where I tend to take charge, then I have to get in touch with my S side. So here's my advice for you guys. One is if you're trying to, the most important thing is to know where you come from, where you lean. Do you tend to lean on the gas or the brake? That's the up and down, the rabbit or the turtle. The most important thing to know, and it is the easiest thing to observe in another person. So if I am trying to guess what makes you tick, what I want to observe first is pace. I want to see how fast you move, how fast you talk, how fast you walk, because in enterprise, we want to know how you make decisions, your decision-making style. And that decision-making style can be like me, fast and loose and just on the spot, or it can be like my wife, who will take 6 months to decide what color to paint something, where I'll just paint it and with whatever color paint we have in the garage, and my wife will not get it painted because she is afraid we'll paint it the wrong color. So how do we, when we come together, how do we compromise? Because it's one thing to know my own foibles, my own strengths and weaknesses, and to know that I tend to be a rabbit. That defines me more than anything, is that I'm that rabbit at the very top of the chart, where fast-paced and outspoken, that defines me. So I got to know that when the heat is on, I want to go. I want to go, march into battle, right? So that's a dominant style, and the influence style, the pace. And you could observe that about me. Now, I personally, my style is between the D and the I. So between the warm and accepting and the questioning and skeptical, I'm pretty close to the middle. Here's what I tell you about that is it is hard to tell with somebody else where they come from on that axis. It is pretty easy to spot if somebody is cautious or they're quick, right? You can differentiate. That narrows it down by half. You know you're dealing with a D and an I if they're a D or an I if they're moving quickly. And all you need to know in an enterprise, situation is how quickly do they make decisions. So if you're in sales, if you're trying to influence somebody, the first thing we need to know about the other person is whether they tend to move fast like a rabbit or slow like a turtle. When we work together to know that I'm a rabbit and I tend to be a rabbit and you tend to be a turtle. So recognizing the other person who comes from the different place and how you can work together. It's 3 challenges, I guess. 1, self. Self-management is 90% of management. Self. Understanding how I lean. The second thing is one-to-one. Understanding that where I lean may not be where you lean, and where I come from ain't where you come from. And I might be Whole Foods and you're Cracker Barrel. But seeing that when you see that pace, you've got it narrowed down to a D or an I. It's hard to tell between the left and the right because society tells us we're all supposed to be warm and fuzzy people, right? We get that message all the time. If I were to ask, I have a hard time getting people to admit that they lean more toward questioning and skeptical than toward warm and accepting because it ain't cool. And it can be a little difficult sometimes that people don't want to come across as cautious, even when they're naturally cautious. Somebody said likable. What do you mean likable?
Oh, I just mean that I think that they're, I think that sort of that dominant side, the very direct gets, probably doesn't often, see, I'm stumbling through this. I think that there is a leaning into looking for likable people, and it depends on their role, because you need those doers and that sort of dominance and sometimes, but then you also need those folks who can navigate personalities and emotions and all that kind of stuff on the other end of things. But
Yeah.
it tends to, the stuff that I'm talking about in the latter, I think tends to be categorized as a little bit more likable.
Yes.
But
Yes.
again, it depends on the situation.
And it depends on what style you come from, right? So let's talk about the D style a little bit. Will anybody raise their hand and say, this is me, D style? Okay. Ain't good or bad, ain't right or wrong. It is, there's a time for it. And this does not define you, right? To say I have a D style means I lean toward the D. That is how I tend to behave when I'm not thinking about behaving. It might describe how you would tend to act at age 20 when you didn't have a care or a responsibility. This does not speak to how we behave. And it does not, hear me on this. I hope I say this well. Your personality style is not predictive of success in any specific enterprise or occupation. Let me say it again. This is not predictive of your success. This is just that one thing in the back, one part of your autoresponder in the back of your head that makes you lean toward acting, one way or the other, how you tend to behave when you're not thinking about behaving. D styles can be difficult for the rest of us. Someone who leans D to the D can be difficult for the rest of us because it tends to be just the facts and the bottom line, right? If I am working on influencing someone to make a sale, let's just say if I'm selling to someone, the best, my favorite kind of customer to sell to is a D style, because you got to get past the quick, get it done. You got to understand that that's where they come from. It is just quick, get it done, give me the bottom line. And when you're in sales, you got to know when you're dealing with that D style, when you see somebody who's moving fast and they tend to be dominant, take control, then you know they're going to make a quick decision and it's going to be yes or no. And they don't mind telling you no. That is what the value of the D style. It is just the facts. It can be, to an extreme, blunt, right? But there's a time for it. And it does not predict your success in anything. So I'll give you an example of someone I met yesterday for the first time, Todd Wolford from Withville, from Main Street, Withville. And he has become a legend in your guys' world, I think. And I have done this long enough to be able to pick up personality styles. Todd is a very strong D style, very strong D style. Now, when you start hearing the stories, and Kyle, if they haven't, I'd appreciate you share Todd's work with them. When you start hearing the stories of what how Withville went from a 6 to an 8 and is on their way to a 10, how Todd did that, he will tell you the number one thing: relationships, building relationships. This is coming from the D style who just won the award, right? You guys want to look up to an example. Here's a person who would tend to be blunt, direct, factual. Don't give me the fluffy stuff. We got to get it done. And with what he had to go through, you hear his story of what he had to go through. You guys are going to go through a lot of the same things yourselves. And I grew in that. It's his strength now because he grew, and he will tell you the mistakes he made early on. But sometimes you got to be a D and sometimes you got to be a S. And there you go. Who else has something to say? Let's just D style is get it done.
I don't see anybody has their hand raised. So I'm going to take a minute to jump in. What?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that, we have, we're talking about creating that diversified board, making sure that it reflects the community, the colors, the professional acumen, the personalities. How might we use this within that balance? I'm really trying to think, because I think it can be very confusing to think, all right, let's see, we need to have that diversity on the board and we need to represent, but we also need to get stuff done. So we can't have a bunch of, feelers on here. We need to have the doers on here. We need to have a nice balance of it. So are there any thoughts in that piece?
Here's the thing. It's the same person. That's what growth is about. This is why you guys are in this cohort. It is to understand that the same person can be both direct and accommodating. It takes practice. It ain't easy. And I'll tell you that what helped Todd, that D style helped him survive, because you guys and your executive directors are going to be hit from 100 different directions with everybody who has a better idea on how to do something. And I tell you, I get nervous when I see things like everybody plays a role, everybody has a say. And I'm going to tell you, I want to move into management stuff, but this is important. Know that people are different, and that you, the same person, you need to be C style at times, I, S, and understand just this is important. But I want to move on. I want to talk about nonprofit. Nonprofit. And I want to make this quick. I want to make this quick. 3 minutes or less to talk about enterprise. Let me find my timer. Why do I say that the word nonprofit should not even exist? Why do I say that?
Maybe because we all need revenue streams to stay viable.
Not just revenue, but yes. What's the difference between a nonprofit and a for-profit organization? I'll tell you what the difference is. It's in your brain. And if you don't get out of it, flounder and fail. The measure of success for a for-profit enterprise, we talk about sustainability, one of those circle words, but sustainability can be a square word in that half the businesses that started 5 years ago are not here today. That's the place for us to start. That is real deal, is that most enterprises fail. And I have seen a million of them fail, and I know why they fail, and it is simple. But it starts with mindset. And a nonprofit mindset, that word nonprofit, as if profit could be zero. Profit is never zero. Just like your forecast is never 100%. Profit is never zero. And this mindset that if we make too much profit, that's a bad thing, right? Or that even the word profit rubs some people the wrong way. And I don't want to throw stones, it's not my area, but particularly though some of those who are on the right-hand side that are all way out on the people side, they hear the word profit, they think greed. And what I want you to understand is put this in a box. Revenue minus cost equals profit. That number, if it were zero, it couldn't be zero for long. If that's your goal, to have a nonprofit, to have revenue minus cost equals zero, you will not be here in 5 years, I assure you. There's two components to any enterprise: mission and money. Why do businesses, why do enterprises, why do nonprofits fail? It ain't because they ran out of mission. It's because they ran out of money. Write this down: money before mission. And if you are one who maybe has that word, if I say the word profit and it makes you throw up in your mouth a little bit, that's where you're from. You can call it net gain or you can call it whatever you want, but there is always a net. There's what you have coming in minus what you have going out and the net. That is half of accounting. It's the flow. What happens between one point and another? And what happens between April 1st and May 1st is a series. It's flow. It is constant change. And in any given moment, we have both profit and loss. So you have a profit and loss statement. We don't call that a profit or loss statement. It's profit and loss, because you can't have profit without loss. You cannot have revenue without cost, right? Revenue minus cost equals profit. So when people say you got to put this first, something else first, big movement today, people before profit, right? You read about that everywhere. People before profit. You will fail and flounder. You can't have profit without people. And you cannot have people without profit. So which comes first? Money, 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 money before mission. Okay? Money before mission. And you're going to get influencers and so-called stakeholders. Big circle word there, stakeholders. Those are people who think they have a say in what you're doing. Stakeholders. Now, I know stakeholders are beautiful people, and we talk about partnerships with stakeholders. I just want you to be aware, the word stakeholder, look it up. It's the biggest misnomer since nonprofit. A stakeholder does not hold a stake. A stakeholder is somebody who holds the money for somebody else. And these are the people, the voices that you're going to hear, people who are going to tell you your business. And I just remember the box, revenue minus cost equals profit. And let me give you another word for profit. That one gives you heartburn. Let me give you a substitute word, service. Service is profit. Think about that mathematically. When I go to buy a car, I'm not buying the car for the car. I'm buying the car for the service that it gives me, right? So when we engage in a transaction, if I am sometimes a buyer, I am sometimes a seller, but I want profit. Profit is service. Profit is service. It's the difference between what I pay for something, the cost I pay, and the benefit I get. That is the service that gives to me. So all the fuzzy words about mission, vision, value, stakeholders, all this stuff, the one circle word I want you to circle 1,000,000 times is service. And the question to ask is not, why are we here? That's a good question sometimes, on occasion, to step back and say, why are we here? What's our purpose? What's our mission? What's our vision? The more important question, I gave you one, where are you at? And that kind of includes, who are you serving right now? Right? But service is the difference between revenue and cost. Revenue minus cost equals service. So no such thing as a nonprofit. This is the black and white part. Understand the people part, but get the black and white part about doing things done, doing things done, about getting things done. This is a process. Process, a square word, map, process. Let me define process. Work, job, the process. Okay, that I can put in a box and I can manage it. So how do we divide art and science, and when do we got to see things through both lenses? And I'm going to tell you that the biggest fear I have for you guys, because I have a feeling some of these localities will do really well and some will, we're all in different states. But here's my biggest fear: being spread too thin. being spread too thin. And after talking to Todd Wolford from Withville and Josh Pennington, who's their president of the board, who happens to be my brother-in-law, what I heard from Todd, the danger of being spread too thin. So be careful of your influences, your stakeholders, your everybody who has an opinion. And I want to tell you how you try to maintain your focus. It's with a concept I call rocks. Rocks. And if you Google rocks, managing rocks, you'll find a YouTube videos of people who will take, they'll take a bucket and or a jar and say, your rock is your big project. It's a one big thing that you have to do, a rock. Every team should have 1, 2, or 3 rocks. And here's how we define a rock. It is a project that you couldn't get done in a day if you wanted to, right? It's going to take more than one day to do this rock, right? Rock. The jar example is, let a guess in. The jar example is if you take sand and pebbles and you put them in your jar and then you try to put your big rock in, it won't fit. But if you put the rock in first, then the pebbles, then the sand, it will fit. Rocks are your most important thing. They are also often the least urgent thing, and that's the danger. Because it can't be done in one day, it's the thing we tend to put off. It's the thing that the pebbles and the sand and the swirl and the activity coming at you, the stakeholders, everybody who's got the new idea of the day, put it in form of a rock. So I said it's got to be something that's not done in the day. It's got to, the way we define it is from X to Y by when. This is a process. It doesn't get any more complicated than this. This is a plan, which is another word for a process, the do, who, do list. Every meeting you have this should be the outcome, the do, who, do list. This is the process. This is what the decision we've made on these are 3 things we're going to do. So if I take this rock and I say, we are going to put in new street lights by that, this is our rock for this quarter, this is our goal. I got to put that up in front of everybody. And then I got to plan that project around that rock. And then when the stakeholders and everybody who's got the new idea of the day comes along, we point to this sign that says this quarter, this is what our focus is. So learning how to manage a process, manage a project, and understand a profit and loss and a balance sheet, this is where I want you guys to live, and I want you to be aware of all the voices that will tell you a million different things you should be doing, and to really get laser focused about what it is you do, what it is you pick off that you could do, because there are only so many hours in the day. We only have so much capacity. So if I could give you any advice, the best indicator I could tell about your success in this role, in this mobilization, is how often you say the word no. Because it is really easy to say yes. And especially those of us who are on the warm and accepting side, saying yes is easy, saying no is hard. And that's what you got to do. It's about decisions and conversations. And the most important decision you can make is what you will not do, what you do not do. The ability to say, no, not now. put it in the parking lot. It's not one of our current rocks. Okay, and let's understand about enterprise, that enterprise is about exchanging profit. And two people get together and making exchanges is not any more complicated than that. Because thing is, one of these Main Street businesses, if they are successful, it's the same person who owned that business, and say they make it to a $50 million or a $500 million operation. You know what? Sometimes, some of us will take that person and we'll say, oh, now that's a CEO. That's a greedy CEO that's running this $500 million corporation. It's the same person that was running the one-person operation on your main street. It's a human being. So we think big business is bad, small business is beautiful. That's a beautiful thing. But we have got to get our small businesses past the point of sustainability, because half of them won't be here in 5 years. So don't forget, revenue minus cost equals profit. Okay, sorry, Kyle, I was on a rant. Go ahead.
You are, but that's good. Rants are good. So much of what I'm hearing from you mirrors what I've talked to communities about, and it comes from Simon Sinek. And I'm sure you know that dude and his leadership books and so forth. But he has his own tirade, or not tirade. It's kind of negative, but his own rant recently that I read and around being a for impact organization. So, don't identify yourself as a nonprofit, meaning have that be really sort of your charge as you move forward in everything, your motivator. It's a delineation, it's a category in IRS, but what you're really working towards here is impacts. And of course, you've got to have money, and you have to have a good plan, and you have to know where you want to go in order to do that, because that's your number one, to have impact, to have that mission fulfillment, to see you get from that program number 5 in order to get to that number 8, like Withville has moved through that. So you're really moving towards that impact side of things. Do you think that parallels your message?
Pretty well. I have to caution about Simon Sinek. If you have not seen the video, look for the TED Talk called the Golden Circle, Simon Sinek. But it gives me a good opportunity to kind of push back just a little bit, Kyle, not against Simon or you or starting with why or any of the things that you will learn from Simon Sinek and our other influencers. Simon is a great guy. I think a lot of them, and you know where he lives? Boston, Harvard. So I can tell you this about Big Stone Gap. It ain't Harvard. I can tell you every Main Street enterprise is owner who picks up a book about business is going to read people like Simon Sinek, who will tend to take you out on the fluffy side a little bit. So when you see that video, start with why. I'll answer your question. I think for impact, that's pretty good, but I think it's too complicated. It is for profit. Profit is service. We are a for-profit enterprise. We want to increase profit, because when you increase profit, you increase the value of your enterprise. That is what it's all about. That's what ties in why a nonprofit is no different than a for-profit, because the goal is, are you ready? You may not have heard this. The goal is to increase the value of the enterprise. That's the goal. Don't complicate it. You increase the value of the enterprise by being more profitable. That means giving more service. So you could focus on the impact or focus on the money. And I will tell you, focus on the money first. And nothing wrong with being from Boston. Just understand people who are not where you are. Understand who the audience is. When I write a book from the campus in Harvard, that's where I'm writing the book from. And if I am writing it to business people, My definition of business people and Harvard's are different. Harvard thinks about the Fortune 100 and the sexy new startup from Silicon Valley. You read a business book and you find one that is not written from one of those two perspectives, the Fortune 100 or Silicon Valley, find one that's not written from one of those two perspectives, and they're very few. I'll give you a few. I will tell you, number one, I will say, The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. Read that book. Everyone on this call, if you do not read this book, I don't think you can be a good guide to Main Street businesses. The E-Myth Revisited. The subtitle of that book is Why Most Small Businesses Fail and What to Do About It. But sometimes when there's a title of a book that intrigues, that should make you read the book. That's something you guys need to know. Why most small businesses fail. They do not fail because they ran out of mission. They fail because they run out of money. Money first, and impact. All the other stuff is second. More money, more mission. Thank you. The E-Myth Revisited.
Thank you, Todd. Hey,
yeah,
Brooke has a question, and then we need to start moving toward closure.
Closing it up. Yeah, go ahead. I want to talk about signs before we leave, so go ahead.
Okay. Brooke, do you have a question?
Well, I kind of was going back to what you said, coming from a business side, a for-profit for years, and then becoming an executive director, for Main Street program. I think that was the scariest thing for me was, nonprofit. I was like,
yeah,
okay, because nonprofit, I'm all about service, and that's what we provide. We provide a service for our community. But without a profit, we can't provide this service. Our hands are tied. So that has been probably the one thing that has worried me the most about, moving forward and how we, do that and creating that profit so that we can keep doing what we're
thinking
doing.
that way, right? Don't let them pollute you to start using nonprofit terminology. The difference between a 501c3 and it's a tax thing. It's tax. That's the designation. It's about taxes, but it's about the ownership of the organization. Okay. If I own a business on Main Street, it's pretty clear I'm the owner, or me and my partner own this business. Who owns a 501c3? The community, right? But the community wants the same thing as any other ownership group does. Increase the value of the enterprise, right? That comes from profit. All those formulas that you know from all those years in for-profit, that's what you gotta lean toward. Just to keep the ideal and the real in perspective. Nonprofits fail at an extraordinary rate, and they flounder at an even higher rate. For a business, the measure of success for a business, where I said if somebody grows off to be a successful CEO who we all hate because they're greedy all of a sudden, they change into a different person. But if that number is about $50 million. Over a 20-year period, these may not be exactly real numbers, but I'm going to give you a YouTube video that you guys, every one of you has to watch, called Why Everything We Think About Nonprofits Is Wrong. So that's a good video to watch. Lamada, can somebody look it up? I think his name is Lamada, something like that. The 20-minute TED Talk that I just ask you to watch, because he will go into detail about how nonprofits, he will go into detail. Sorry, I see these chats pop up in it, and I got a little bit of ADHD going on. let's move on. I want to say one more thing about Simon Sinek. When you watch that video, yeah, the way we think about charity is dead wrong. Dan Pallotta. He lists like 5 things that is all mindset. One, the pay. Number one, pay. That was my biggest fear when I went to nonprofit. Let me tell you a quick story. I spent my life in for-profit. I'm a business guy. In 2004, I answered an ad in the paper to be the COO of Goodwill of Central Virginia. I got to Goodwill, and we had 8 stores in Richmond. I was paid a salary, 6 figures, to take this operation to another level. Started with 8 stores and $10 million in revenue. 4 years, less than 4 years later, we had 22 Goodwill stores, and we were doing $25 million in revenue. That money goes to the mission of helping people who have barriers to employment. Now, if they paid me $150,000 to do that job, how many people would look at that, find out about that, and say, that's just not right? That's a nonprofit, right? They can't afford, they shouldn't do it. It's not right. And that's one thing that this video will tell you, that hey, everything is the same. Nonprofit and for-profit, you got to manage it the same. You got to, period.
Thank you, Todd. And I know time goes by quickly. It is, and there's so much to say. So I want to thank you very much for your time. With that,
do I have 5 minutes to look at some signs?
Well,
3. Let me do this in just 2 minutes. Okay, 1 minute. I'm sorry, I wasn't very prepared. I will write up some stuff for you guys and give you some suggested next steps.
That'd be great.
But I want to tell you just a warning of something else. If I haven't given you enough warnings, be aware of signs. Okay, and I think that speaks to you in Main Street and everything. Enterprise, for-profit or nonprofit, is about impressions, and the impressions that a person gets, moments of truth. When somebody gets an impression of us, that's a moment of truth. And the success of your town or your enterprise is based on how many of them are positive. Signs is one thing in particular, I will tell you. A moment of truth when somebody gets an impression, but a sign is when you intentionally send a message, right? I want you guys to realize that the signs that end up on the walls and the doors are not signs that are welcoming. Okay, I will just give you a few examples of where you think a sign says something, but it says something else. Like, don't put paper towels in the toilet, right? You're sending a message, and we are going to spend a whole lot of money in our towns on signage and branding and all this stuff. Do not have homemade signs made by handwritten signs. Do this right. Signs in your town, in your business, in your office. Look at anything hanging up there, because you'll end up with stuff like this: that the restroom is out of odor, a toilet. Then you talk about exclusive. That this toilet's only for disabled, elderly, pregnant children, which is just very, just not right. And every sign sends an impression, and this is what most signs look like. It's no bears allowed, and there's a bear in there. So I will leave you with that. That's your sign, and the rest is make profit, serve people.
Thank you, Todd. Yeah, if you'll share those slides with me, I'll make sure that they get to everyone. And I appreciate your time, Todd. I wish that we have more time to talk with everybody. But I want to honor that we've been here for 2 hours and it's time to release and go back to our personal and our work lives. So, but we'll get back to you on some things. I do want to show you, just talk about next steps. So let me pull that up. Hopefully you see that. Yep. Let me do that. So as far as the next 30 goes, again, if you haven't registered or figured out what's happening with attendance for the upcoming Rev Ups in May, please register for that. You know, you've got Fredericksburg, Alta Vista, or Bristol to choose from. And what you want to do is bring your budget. If you already have one, bring that to the Rev Up for a particular exercise. If you don't, you can bring a starter budget or rough out something, and you can find that in the Washington Main Street Program Guide. And so that is in the Google Drive. So your assignment is to read page 44 to 50 of the Washington Main Street Program Guide. It's found in the module, left out an E2 folder. And what you want to do is start creating your board job descriptions. You're starting to assemble some of those foundational documents that you need for your organization. So, you know, you write in Word or Google Docs and upload it to your community folder. And then map out your board composition using the Main Street Board composition matrix. And think of your committee right now. If you do not have a board, if you're still doing that, your committee right now is your starter board. And so you need to start thinking about expanding that and getting to the point where you've got leadership that can move that nonprofit organization, your Main Street organization, forward. So there is a matrix in there, so board composition. So those are your two big things. And then certainly meet with your Main Street program manager for support. This is what those two documents look like. We rip off and duplicate across the network, national network. This guide is fabulous. It has everything that you need. Sample articles of incorporation, you know, templates for a work plan, obviously all of these job descriptions and so forth. So even executive director roles and responsibilities. So it is the Bible there for Main Street stuff, at least according to Washington, but I embrace it. The other is this Main Street board composition. And man, would I love this to be like a Word doc or something that you can work on in there and then upload, but it isn't, it's a PDF. So you're gonna have to mark it up either using Acrobat Reader and then upload it back up to your community folder once you've figured things out. So go ahead and do that and have conversations with your PA, they can help clarify some things. So at this point, before I let you go, and thank you for these bonus 3 to 5 minutes, is there anything that you need some more clarity at this point? Any questions? Let's see. I still have my hand raised, but I'm talking, so we don't need that. Okay. Then lastly, just remember that the grant cycle closes on April 28th at 11:59 p.m. You will have access to a community vitality grant, which is up to $30,000, and that's a 2-to-1 match. So that's closing in quickly. So talk to your PA about what that project looks like. We're happy to provide technical assistance and help you to craft a really impactful competitive grant application and project. And then just looking forward, June 15th is the 4 Impact Storytelling. That's a full 2-hour huddle. We also have the next webinar on July 13th, which is on strategy-driven programming. And then otherwise, I want to just bring to your attention that you will have some services coming your way as a Mobilizing Main Street community. That's Main Street America Strategic Market Development Services in late summer, early fall. And what this will be is looking at your market, doing some survey gathering to find out what your community wants, and doing that science and art mixture to kind of figure out, all right, what are your high level strategic focus areas? So this is going to really help you to narrow in on a strategy for the types of activities that you'll take on and for your work plan. So I'm going to leave it there. It is 4 after. Is there anything at this point that you want to ask questions about before we send you out into the world? If you didn't get a chance to sort of process some of this, like I said, talk to your PA, reach out to some of your other cohort members here and find out where they are. And, you know, you've got a whole circle network of support to help you through this process. So there's only so much we can cover in a 2-hour meeting once a month. Okay, if there are no questions, y'all are free to go. Thank you so much, Todd and Chandler. If you're still hanging around out there, we appreciate your time. Be well and
Kyle,
get out and enjoy this weather. Yeah, Todd.
Kyle,
Yeah, I'll stick around a little longer.
I just put a note in the chat with my phone number and an offer to everybody here. I'm happy to have a one-to-one conversation with you. And I was all over the place today, but if nothing else, you can tell I'm passionate about it, I hope. But give me a call or a text and I'm happy to talk to you.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. And I hope that you guys take him up on that offer. Sorry, I got to take all my throat. I'm going to get some water. I'm going to cut out. Y'all take care. Thank you.